Our national anthem today will be sung by Tatum Henderson, and the signing of the national anthem will be done by her mother, April Whitty. Tatum.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order.
Thank you, Tatum. Please uncover and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our invocation this morning will be given by Chaplain Ward Gens. Ward?
Heavenly Father, may this day be a blessing to all that are gathered here on this Veterans Day. Continue to bless our veterans as they have served both you and this great nation. Help those who have suffered in any way. Keep us all mindful that their suffering will not be in vain. As our coins and paper money proudly proclaim, in God we trust. Amen.
Please be seated. Today marks the armistice of 1918 that ended the fighting in World War I. Every year on Veterans Day, at the 11th hour of the 11th day in the 11th month, we honor a special group of Americans who risked life and limb to preserve the American way of life. American veterans are centuries of freedom. They fought in World Wars I and II, Korea, Vietnam, Lebanon, Panama, Grenada, the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq. As we honor our veterans today, our armed forces are still fighting the war on terrorism. On Veterans Day, all Americans are asked to pause and reflect on the contributions of people who stood in harm's way, who carried out the highest form of public service, and answered this nation's call to arms. Being a veteran means giving up so much that most of us take for granted. Be sure to thank a veteran for their sacrifices today and every day. We're proud to be Americans, and we're proud to be veterans. Just a couple announcements. Congressman Fitzgerald will not be here today. He had a scheduling conflict. I'm sure they're still very busy in Washington, D.C. The ceremony on Veterans Day is put on by the Watertown Veterans Council, and the Veterans Council is comprised of American Legion Post 189, VFW Post 3709, AMVETS Post 35, the Marine Corps League Detachment Bartlemy Schwefel 349, and the Disabled American Veterans Chapter 63. We will have some words from representatives from those organizations a little later. With the absence of Congressman Scott Fitzgerald, it's my pleasure to introduce Senator John Jagler, and he's also to be congratulated, newly re-elected. John.
I know Congressman Fitzgerald will love to have been here. Yes, you can imagine his world is a little strange right now with the election results and all things a little bit in flux right now in Washington. So I'm sure he sends his regards. You know how much this day is important to him. I love this event because as I was walking through and shaking hands with the honor guard, two of them said, "Short and sweet today, Jagler, short and sweet." And it goes back to when I gave a speech at the Elks Club on their Memorial Day event, and I forgot my readers. And I had this beautiful speech that actually my staff wrote. It was wonderful, the history, all this stuff, all these great words, and I said, well, so I have this great speech, but thank you. I got the biggest round of applause I ever got in the room. But it is all about thanking you today, and you know, this is a very strange for me right now because you were all in my dream last night. I know that sounds weird, but let me back up a little bit. I took a sleep study a couple of weeks ago and failed miserably. I found out that I was not going into REM sleep and dreaming or sleeping at all. So I got a CPAP machine a week ago. And it's amazing because I have vivid dreams. For the first time in a long time. It's really, anybody who's had sleep apnea or whatever and got on a machine, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're sleeping like you've never slept before. And I never used to be able to remember my dreams. But in my dream, I gave the speech that my staff had written, and I always preface it by saying, I didn't serve, and it bothered my father, my late father, greatly. He was a Marine, and he had 3 sons, and none of us went into service. And I know it bothered him. And it's been something that I've been thinking about and kind of carrying with for a long time. And as I go to the Capitol and we work on things, I try to use that as my service. I try to use that as, you know, always having veterans on my mind and what can I do to help them. And as we pass more initiatives for mental health initiatives and for homeless veterans and things like that, I'd like to think I'm trying to ease my own mind a little bit on my dad not having a Marine. As I told Jerry Hub, yesterday was the Marine Corps birthday. Growing up, I wasn't sure what was more important, my birthday or the Marine Corps birthday. I think they were celebrated about equally by my dad in the house. But in this dream, I gave this speech and I mentioned my dad, and I got down and my dad was there. And it was the strangest thing. It was anybody who's dreamed about their loved ones who've lost, it's wonderful, isn't it? It's a great, comforting thing. And he said a couple things. He said, first of all, anything that you ever did at the Capitol, your wife did better. My wife was a nurse at the VA hospital in Middleton and served the veterans. So any service that I did in the Capitol, she made up for my lacking of not serving. And he said, I want you to know I'm proud of you. And that's always great to hear. And then he ended with saying, and for God's sakes, get a haircut. So it's with that I cannot thank you enough. And I've told you this story before. If you heard it, I apologize. But I always ask veterans, is it, you know, it becomes cliche. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. As I walk down the line, I thank them all for their service. Do you ever get tired of hearing that? Or does it seem quaint or not real? And to a person, they all say, no, absolutely not. And then there was a woman who came up to me after a Veterans Day event in Waterloo and said that her husband is back from Afghanistan and having a terrible time adjusting. Deployment is different now. They're deployed longer for more often. It's It's a transition time is difficult. Every war, every service time is different. Vietnam veterans had a different experience than Korea, then World War II, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, I want you to know, sometimes I will take my husband out and make up a pretend grocery list to go to the store or go to Walmart, because I know he's gonna wear his Marine service hat or shirt or something. And sometimes I beg and I make up this list, so we'll go to the store, that someone will say, thank you for your service. Someone out of the blue, someone he doesn't know. Because I know it lifts his spirits. And I know that it softens his heart a little bit from what he's experiencing now here at home. So I hope you can truly believe me when I say thank you. This country is better because of you. It's here because of you. You saved this country in many ways, and you are the best of us. You're the best of our community. You're the best of our country. And with that, I just want to say thank you on Veterans Day. I hope that was short enough.
Before I announce our next guest, I just want to take us back about a little over 21 years ago. It happened to be my 55th birthday on September 11th, 2001. And I'll never forget, at the time, Dale Wetzel and I were partners hauling mail. And so I was planning on finishing a long shift that we were hauling mail out of Milwaukee. And at 8 o'clock that morning, I came down off the dock and climbed into my truck to go out for my last run of the day. And I always had WTMJ radio on in the truck, and as I started up the truck, I heard the news that a plane had flown into the World Trade Center. And I thought, oh, small plane, somebody got off course. And before I left even got out of the postal docks, another plane went in, and I knew that something was happening. But the reassuring thing that morning was John on WTMJ with his comforting words and no panic. But I still want to appreciate all these years later how you helped me through that day. With that being said, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mayor Emily McFarland. Emily?
I was saying before we started, I always time my speeches, so I'm always under 5 minutes. So if someone wants to start a clock, now's the time. So good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today to honor and remember the incredible service and impact of our veterans in the United States and, of course, here in Watertown. It will forever be one of the greatest honors of my lifetime to be able to be among the heroes in this room and have the privilege of speaking words of gratitude to each of you. On behalf of this community, I sincerely and deeply thank each one of you for doing what so few have done, for serving beyond your own interests and desires, and for putting this country and the core principles we stand on as your primary focus. We are indebted to each and every one of you. So often on Veterans Day, we hear and talk about the bravery and sacrifice of our veterans, and we should. We should highlight their willingness to be of service, and we should honor the sacrifices they make. The events you didn't get to attend, the milestones you all missed, and the ultimate sacrifice that far too many have paid. Those words of gratitude and admiration, while they are spoken frequently, are still so important to hear, and so very sincere when we say them. I cannot fathom what you have experienced. I cannot place myself in those situations and feel what you must have felt. I cannot grasp the amount of courage that it took. But what I can feel is the inspiration that is born out of that bravery and sacrifice. And so today, on this Veterans Day, I want to thank you all for something a little different. I want to thank you for inspiring generations of Americans. Since I can remember, I have been in awe of this country. I have been in love with this country, with her flag, and with our founding principles, and with our freedom. And if you know me, and some of you in this room do, I was the little girl standing on the curb fervently waving at each flag bearer and color guard that marched by. You see, from the earliest of ages, I was inspired by all of you to do this, to serve this country and this community in some way. And I know that I'm not alone in that. I know of close family friends that are Marines today because of that inspiration. I know of other veterans who felt that same draw, that same fire inside, simply by being in your presence. And just recently, I came to experience that same inspiration in the next generation of Americans. Since I became mayor, we've created this really cool and kind of robust, age-appropriate field trip that files students through City Hall, and they get to see all of our different departments. So they see engineers and accountants, laborers, scientists, nurses, police officers, firefighters, you get it. On one of our recent field trips, we had 3 second grade classes, and my son happened to be in one of those. So when I got home from work that evening, he handed me an envelope with a thank you card inside. So I brought it to work, shared it with my team, and when I opened it, I got to see that the students had chosen a career they learned about, colored in that picture, and taped it into the card. Being a mom, of course, I looked to see what my son did. And you know what I saw? I saw a colored in silhouette of a firefighter with the word Army written above it. You see, despite exposure to dozens of different careers on that field trip, my son has been inspired by each of you. At the age of 8, you have ignited a fire inside of him, and I'm sure I'm not the only parent that can say that. Your actions, your presence, your devotion has resonated with him. The veteran hats you wear, the poppies you hand out, the ceremonies you run, they inspire us. They inspire me, they inspire that Marine, my son, and everyone in between. Serving others is a dying concept. There's little money or fortune in that line of work, but every once in a while, when you step back from the madness that we're sometimes living in today, you will see pockets of your impact still. Moments when the next person is signing to enlist, moments when families are lining up to stand for the flag passing by, and moments when an 8-year-old little boy crosses off the word firefighter and writes Army. While your years of service may be decades ago, your impact is still being felt. Whether you served last month, last year, or last century, please know you are still serving this country, and you are inspiring generations of Americans. How proud you should feel in yourselves that your lifetimes have been in constant service to this beautiful nation we live in. So I thank you for all of it, for your service, your bravery, your sacrifice, and your inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, Mayor. Now we'll have some remarks from our the Legion Auxiliary President, Mary Petrie.
I'm going a little different route too. Chuck Norris, Tony Bennett, Mr. T, Morgan Freeman, Tom Selleck, and B. Arthur. What do they have in common? You might simply think of them as celebrities, and you'd be right. But did you know they also served their country? Chuck Norris joined the Air Force as an air policeman and learned his martial arts skill while serving. Tony Bennett was in the Army 63rd Infantry Division. His unit was primarily responsible for cleaning up after the Battle of the Bulge. He also performed with the military band while serving. Mr. T, and who doesn't know Mr. T, was an MP in the Army. Very fitting, I guess. Morgan Freeman was a radar technician in the Air Force. Tom Selleck signed up with the 160th Infantry Regiment of the California National Guard, and his images were used on recruiting posters, both while serving and after he was discharged. B. Arthur served in the Marines as a truck driver and typist, and was one of the first members of the Women's Reserve. These celebrities share the title veteran with our very own hometown heroes. Look around you. We're surrounded by heroes. They may never have had the notoriety of those mentioned, but we are here today to thank them for their service to God and country. Veterans, please accept our heartfelt thanks for your patriotism, service, and sacrifice to ensure our freedoms. This is a special day to remember all who served, past and present. While we can never repay you, we will never forget how extraordinary you are. As your branch of service is called, please stand for your salute. Air Force. Army. Coast Guard. Marines. Navy. Happy Veterans Day, a day to celebrate every day. God bless, and God bless America.
As I mentioned before, the various organizations, veterans organizations that help put this ceremony on and do so much for our community, we are all in the same boat. As you know, none of us are getting any younger. Every year on Memorial Day, we're putting out more and more flags on veterans' graves as they pass on. And I just wanted to give a little opportunity for some of these veteran organizations, representatives to say just a few brief words. I would like to say in the last 8 or 9 years, the American Legion Post 189 had about 420 members going back 8, 9 years. Now we are down in the 350s. And this isn't because we're not recruiting. We've recruited over that 8, 9 years dozens of new members. But unfortunately, time has taken its toll on so many of us and our former members. And we really, if you know anyone that could belong, it would be appreciated, because we try and strive to do the best we can for our community. With that being said, I want to bring up Judy Wade. She's with the Marine. She's a retired warrant officer from the Marine Corps, and she's representing the Marine Corps Lead Detachment 349. Judy?
Good morning. I am the Adjutant Paymaster for the Marine Corps, and as Senator Jagler mentioned, yesterday was the 247th Marine Corps birthday, so I want to make sure I get that in right up front. Semper Fidelis, Marines. If you're here, you probably didn't party too hard yesterday. And John, I'm not sure how you would look in high and tight.
There's one way to find out.
I know, that's up to you. I mean, so, it's also, I just want to point out, today is also being celebrated as the 240th anniversary of the Purple Heart. There are ceremonies going on across the nation. I believe the largest ceremony is in New York City, where the One World Trade Center will be lit up in purple. Just a little bit about the Purple Heart. It is our nation's oldest military award. It was instituted by George Washington in 1782. It was called the Badge of Military Merit. And it was just simply a piece of purple cloth or silk that was cut in the shape of a heart and put over the heart of the awardee. For about 150 years, it was just forgotten about. And then in the early 1930s, Douglas MacArthur decided to reinstitute the Purple Heart, and they designed a medal. It's a beautiful medal, and it's the one we have today. It is a Purple Heart with the profile of George Washington centered on it. It is rimmed and backed by brass. Above the medal is the family crest of George Washington with 2 sprigs of leaves on either side. and it is hung on a purple ribbon with white trim. On the back, it says, "For military merit," which goes back to the original badge of military merit. When this was reinstituted, it was just for the Army. In 1942, President Roosevelt decided that the Purple Heart should be able to be awarded to all branches of the military service, those killed in action or wounded. And this was retroactive to December 7th, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Then, in 1984, President Reagan expanded the award of the Purple Heart to military veterans or military that were killed or wounded by acts of terrorism. This was following the terrorist attack by Hezbollah on the Marine barracks in Beirut, Lebanon, where 241 peacekeeping troops, including 222 Marines, were murdered by those terrorists. So I thought at this moment, I don't know if there's any here, but I thought it would be worthwhile to recognize anyone here, any veteran here who has been awarded a Purple Heart. If you would, stand and be recognized, or raise your hand and be recognized. Nobody here, okay. However, I know we did have our Marine Corps meeting earlier this week, and we had 2 in attendance at our meeting that are Purple Heart awardees. That was Gene Stocks, who was a former member of the Watertown Veterans Council here for many years, and Fernando Rodriguez. So as we observe our Veterans Day, it is an opportunity for veterans and the community to reflect and show gratitude. Enjoy your Veterans Day, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Judy. It's also now my pleasure to introduce Troy Messer, who is with the Disabled American Veterans Chapter 63 here in Watertown. Troy.
I'd say good morning, but everybody else has already been saying good morning, so I'm going to say hello. My name's Troy Messer. I'm the commander for Chapter 63 here in Watertown, Disabled American Veterans. And one of the things that we strive is to help our local veterans first. We're here for you. It's not about just the veteran, but it is also about the veterans' families. Not only do we help the veterans, but if there's a family member of a veteran that needs assistance, we're there. We have 2 things that we normally say. 1, you're not alone. There's no veteran here that's alone. There are a lot of veterans out here that can help you. All you got to do is speak up and say, hey, I need help. We also say we got your back. DAV can do a lot of things that most government programs cannot do. Okay, we have funds available that our people, which right now is 8 to 10 members, and that's all I've got. We can get this money set aside to help you out during the winter or whatever it is. We strive to do that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today is not just the veteran, but their families, because they go through a lot of sacrifices too. My wife had been through a lot of things, my children, and I got something here I want to read that really struck a note in my heart, and I just want to pass it on to you, and I hope you enjoy it. It's called The Military Wife. The good Lord was creating a model for military wives, and it was into his 6th day of overtime when an angel appeared. She said, Lord, you seem to be having a lot of trouble with this one. What's the matter with the standard model? The Lord replied, have you seen the specs on this order? She has to be completely independent, possess the qualities of both father and mother, be a perfect hostess for 4 to 40 in an hour's notice, run on black coffee, handle every emergency imaginable without a manual, and be able to carry a cheerful, even if she's pregnant and has the flu, and she must be willing to move 10 times in 17 years. And oh yes, she must have 6 pairs of hands. The angel shook her head and said, 6 pairs of hands, no way. The Lord continued, don't worry, we'll make other military wives to help her, and we'll give her an unusually strong heart, so it can swell with pride for her husband's achievements, sustain the pain of separation, beat soundly when it's overworked and tired, and be large enough to say, I understand, when she doesn't, and say, I love you regardless. And the angel circled around the model of the military wife. She looked at it real closely and sighed. It looks fine, but it looks too soft. She might look soft, replied the Lord, but she has the strength of a lion. You would not believe what she can endure. Finally, the angel bent over and ran her finger across the cheek of the Lord's creation. He said, there's a leak, she announced. Something is wrong with the construction. I'm not surprised that it's cracked. You're trying to put too much in this model. The Lord appeared offended and said to the angel, what you see is not a leak, he said. It's a tear. A tear? What is that for? Asked the angel. And the Lord replied, it's for joy, sadness, pain, disappointment, loneliness, pride, and dedication to all the values that she and her husband hold dear. She says, you're a genius. And the Lord looked puzzled and replied, I didn't put it there. So I saw this, and it reminded me of my own personal experiences with my family, in that I was over in the Gulf War. I did 4 tours in Iraq. And it does change you. But the sacrifices that we had to endure were great. And she had to go through more than I did, I think, in my opinion, being a military wife and that. So I want to put a shout out to not only the veteran, but the families that have to endure what we go through too. Thank you.
I don't want to forget our VFW chapter, Gary Winkler, the commander of Post 3709, is serving with the Honor Guard this morning. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Mark Kotwitz. He can say a few words if he wants about the AMVETS. He's the commander of AMVETS Post 35, and he's also the AMVET commander for District 7 here in Wisconsin. And Mark will be dedicating 9 pavers. Mark?
Thank you, Ron. I don't know how to follow up what people have said already, but especially Troy. The AMVETs have been around since 1947. They were made possible through Congress. They've been active here in Watertown since then. I know that we used to share an office at City Hall with the mayor back in '47. We were the largest veterans group in the city, and like everything else, time goes on and people fade away, and I know I joined the AMVETs, and it's going to age me now, but 1984, my dad signed me up, and being a young man, I found no time for it because I didn't see what was the need. Well, after I got older, my dad passed away, and I decided, well, I need to join the AMVETs. Why? Well, any veterans group, if it wasn't for the veterans organizations, veterans wouldn't have what they have, because the organizations go to Congress and fight for us to get us benefits that we deserve. So, that being said, I'd like to dedicate these pavers that were put in this year. We only had 9. First of all, I'd like to thank Blocks for their great job that they do with doing the pavers for us, and Jerry Happ for the gravel and sand to put the pavers in, and the team that helped me this year, Steve and his wife, Gene Gillis and Tyler Whitty. There was only 4 of us. Well, we only had 9 of them to put in. It wasn't so bad. It had rained and the ground was soft. As of today, we have over 500 pavers in the park. You can find a brochure at the American Legion at the Watertown Chamber of Commerce, and you can also go to the AMVETS website, amvetspost35wisconsin.org, to get a brochure, or I have them down here on the table. The first paver is PFC Charles M. Dowd, U.S. Army, 999th Armored Field Artillery Battalion, U.S. 8th Infantry, Army Korea, 1951-1953. 1IC Oliver R. Cole, U.S. Navy, 1970 to 1978, Submarine Service, SSBN 619, SSBN 656. Private Gunther Churchill, U.S. Army, 1956-1959, Company A, 999th Engineer Battalion. Sergeant Joseph Beck, U.S. Marine Corps, 2014-2018, 0621 radio. Staff Sergeant Martin Thuroff, U.S. Army, World War II, 1941-1945, Section Leader 745, U.S. ETO, Purple Heart. Corporal Charles Perkle, U.S. Marine Corps, 11-156 to 8-460. Corporal Victoria L. Wagner, née Perkle, U.S. Marine Corps, 11-1577 to 11-1479. PFC 5, Larry A. Moss, U.S. Army, Vietnam War, 1967 to 1969. HM3, Dennis W. Berg, U.S. Navy, 1976 to 1980. Canoa Bay, Marine Corps, Air Station, Hawaii. And that is all I have. And I hope that if you think you might want to honor one of your relatives, friends, neighbors, whoever, please don't hesitate to pick up a brochure. It's a really great way to memorialize a veteran in your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you for the year-long efforts you make for these pavers that we dedicate on both Memorial Day and Veterans Day. So thanks for all your hard work. Firing squad.